The 7 Vital Virtues of the Wildly Successful Entrepreneur. Session 3, Ethics. Well, welcome to Session 3 of our 7 sessions on the Vital Virtues. We've been looking at Gandhi's 7 spiritually detrimental traits, taking them and learning the corresponding virtue and applying it to the small business world. In our first one, we looked at hard work, which we redefined as smart work. We understand that smart work, never confusing busyness with productivity, coupled with appropriate work-life balance, is an absolute necessity in the entrepreneurial way of life. We also learned that while pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. In other words, while greed may be an unwelcome visitor, profit is your friend. And today, we're looking at the third of Gandhi's 7 spiritually detrimental traits, which is commerce without morality. And when we take that and flip it around, what we're really talking about is ethics. And what we're really saying is you should engage in commerce with morality. Now let's face it, it's hard to be honest and ethical when others around you aren't. As you know, I'm a recovering attorney. I spent 25 years in private practice, and one of the blessings and curses that come from not only the training of law school but also years of practice is that lawyers look at human behavior differently than most other human beings. We're trained to look at the dark side of human interactions. Some might even say lawyers are trained to be professional cynics, and there's some truth to that. I am a normally optimistic person, and it was difficult at times for me to maintain that attitude towards life in my years practicing. Well, one thing that happens to lawyers is that we see many instances where the reason problems arise is because one or more people are not being honest or ethical in dealing with one or more other people. In fact, in a perfect world, where all humans are always honest and ethical, we wouldn't need lawyers. And right now I know many of you are chuckling and saying, yes, that certainly is a perfect world. Remember, the reason that Shakespeare said, let's kill all the lawyers in that particular play is because without lawyers, the innocents would be without protection. Now, despite the years where I witnessed humans behaving badly, I still believed in the old-fashioned values and still do. And one of the things that's interesting is lawyers, like many other professions, have a set of formal rules, formal ethical rules. And while the guidelines vary somewhat from state to state, I believe that all states have a rule that states essentially that a lawyer should avoid all appearance of impropriety. And I think a lot of the other professions have a similar maxim or similar rule, avoiding appearance of impropriety. I think that's a good maxim for life in general, don't you? Here's another way to put it. Did you ever do something you'd be ashamed to tell your mother about? Now that's usually a good clue that your moral compass is no longer pointing north, unless of course your mom is Ma Barker or something like that. But a good indicator as to whether or not you're following your own moral or ethical principles is whether or not you feel you want to keep something secret because you don't want word of it to get out, because people would think poorly of you. Well, why would they think poorly of you? It's usually because you're doing something that's not congruent with your own moral foundation. Now, in addition to being a lawyer, I've been an entrepreneur in other businesses. And while many people may not view it as such, a law office is really a business in a lot of ways. And in addition to my private practice, both prior to my years as a lawyer, during the years I was an attorney, and thereafter I've been involved in other businesses as a solo entrepreneur, as a partner, and so on. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, having been involved in a lot of different business transactions. And I think that in business, as in law, treating others honestly and ethically is the only way to go. But what if you're dealing with someone through your business who's not so honest and ethical? And what if the dishonest, unethical person is getting away with it? And what if not only is the dishonest, unethical person getting away with it, he or she is thriving? What if that dishonest, unethical person is making beaucoup bucks? And what if he's driving a snazzy, hot car? And what if it's a he, he's got an equally snazzy, hot chick sitting beside him? Or if it's a she, she's got an equally snazzy, hunky dude sitting beside her. Where is the justice in that, you ask? Where is the justice in that? And it's times like that where you're tempted to bastardize the golden rule. Hey, can't we just change it into doing unto the other as he or she is doing unto you? In other words, give them a taste of their own medicine. And we've all been guilty of doing that in our lives at one time or another, haven't we? But alas, the semi-virtuous path is a slippery slope. It is hard, very hard, not to operate on the same plane as your competition. And the hard truth is, you can suffer from time to time as a result. You can shake your fist at God above. You can wish that, as John Lennon said, karma might be instant. But sometimes the bad guys do get away. That said, I firmly believe that the key to success, not only in business, but in life, is to rise above. You need to have the inner strength to maintain your honesty and your values, even when others around you do not. And it's not simple. If you're a wage slave, if you work for somebody else and you find yourself in a situation where you're asked to do something unethical or dishonest, you can quit. But if you own your own business and that situation arises, you have to consider whether acting unethically or dishonestly would benefit you. You can't quit. You have to forge ahead, and you have to be true to yourself. The other old maxim is, you need to be true to thine own self. Well, how do we determine what that is? Well, a lot of us start with what our parents indoctrinated us into, our peers, our friends growing up, things we learned in school, things we've experienced. But at some point when you become a big boy or a big girl, it's always good to do some self-examination and to figure out what is your own self. Because by modern analysis, each individual develops his or her own sense of morality and ethics, of course being mindful of the society and the community in which you live. You need to first determine your values, and then you can stay true to those mores. How about an exercise to get you started? What we need to do is to help you determine your values now that you're an adult, and this may be something you've never put down on paper. And again, we do have the journaling function because we don't want you just to do this within your head. You can use the journaling function on our website. You can type it into your own file. You can handwrite it. You can dictate it, whatever, but don't just, again, do it within your own thoughts. And on this one of the things we're going to start with is to determine what your top 10 life values are. Now, this one may be a stumper for some of you, and if you want some help, if you go back on the website and look on the area where there's a button that says Forms, click on that, it'll scroll down and you'll see another button that says Documents. That'll take you to another screen, and under it you'll see Values. You'll see this exercise, and what's really nice is that with that exercise there's a list of over 300 descriptive words describing values, and they may help. Or you may be able to just do this on your own. And again, we're not asking you to rank them in order, but we're asking you to take a little bit of contemplative time and say, okay, what things are important to me? Is it family? Is it God? Is it my faith? Is it being honest? Is it making money? Is it watching a lot of football on TV? Oh, wait a minute, that's not a value. But you're going to write down your top 10 life values. Then, once you have them down, you're going to write down how they show up in your life. For example, if you say, well, I value my family. How do I do that? Well, last Tuesday I went to my daughter's soccer game, and I was enthusiastic and encouraged her and was there in support of her activity. That's a demonstration. That's an action showing that my actions are congruent with my values. Now here comes the tougher one. Are there areas that you see in your life where maybe you did something in conflict with your values? Hey, you blew off your daughter's soccer game because you rather go out to the sports bar and drink with your buddies. Is that conflicting with your thought that you put family high up on your list? And then a fourth thing to do is if you do find that you have actions that are in conflict with your stated top 10 values, what are you going to do to fix it? What actions are you going to take to address these conflicts? And once you know what your top 10 values are, once you know how they're showing up in your life, once you know where there's a conflict in these in your life, once you know how you might be able to fix that conflict in your life, then you need to know, well, how do I make my personal values congruent with my business values? Because this is different than in our first session. Remember where we were talking about you needed that wall of separation between your personal life and your work life. In this case, you don't want that wall of separation. You want your personal values to carry over into your business. Because if they're not harmonious with one another, you're going to have a tough go of it. You're going to find cognitive dissonance. Something in your brain's just not going to function very well. And when your brain doesn't function well, you're not efficient. You're not productive. You're not a successful entrepreneur. It will hold you back from making yourself into the success that you can be. Well, thanks for looking at our third virtue with me, and we will catch you again on to the next of our vital virtues.